Hi, my name's Tracy. Welcome to my channel. This video will be highlighting the documentary Dancing for the Devil, the 7M Tik Tok Cult. Now, before we get into this video, I just want to mention that this is for entertainment and education purposes only, and please like, share, subscribe, and comment on my video so I can build my community. So, to start off, obviously this video has been very talked about for about a year, and at the end of the video I want to discuss some new findings that have happened as of recent since the video has been aired. Okay, to start off, we're going to start off in Detroit, Michigan, and we're going to talk about the Wilking family. Dean and Kelly supported Melanie and Miranda in their quest to be dancers. They laughed, they danced, they had a wonderful relationship with the family, and it was just a really nice upbringing. And the older the girls got, the more invested they were in their dancing. In fact, they were so invested that they talked about and dreamed about moving to LA together and starting their TikTok channel together and auditioning and all the things. And they actually did what exactly they wanted to do. First, Miranda moved, and she got some notoriety from the show So You Think You Can Dance. And this kind of catapulted her into her passion and knowing that this was exactly where she wanted to be and needed to be. So much so that her sister, who's 2 years younger, Melanie, moved out, and they began a channel on TikTok together called the Wilking Sisters. And it was hugely successful. They had over 3.3 million followers, and they were living their dream. And as they progressed and as they built their brand, people started to reach out to them with opportunities. And one of the gentlemen that reached out to them was named James, and his content creator name was B-Dash. And he let him know that he loved their videos and wanted to be a part of their videos and create some content together. Now, James's style of dancing was completely different than the girls. He actually started a dance movement called crumping. Some said it was a little more aggressive and more street dance, and girls were very much more traditional TikTok style. But they created and collaborated together, and during this collaboration, James and Miranda became very smitten with each other. And Miranda started spending more time with James and less time with her sister, and started only doing dance videos with James and his friends. And she became very much a part of his group of people. And during this time, as she and her sister were spending less time together and she was spending more time with James and his friends, she was introduced to a gentleman called Robert Shin. Robert Shin was a pastor at a church called Shekinah, and he'd been a pastor of this church for many, many, many years. His son and daughter were a part of the church as well, and his son Isaiah was one of the videographers for this group of kids that were all creating content together. And he started bringing them to his house for dinner, and they would sit around the dinner table and talk about different ideas for their videos, but also they preached the Bible, and they talked about how God gave you these passions and God gave you these gifts, and you should give back to God, and you should give tidings to the church and to God because you're so grateful for all that He's done for you. And during these dinners, that's when Robert decided to build his own company called 7M Films. And in this company, he was going to gather these different creators together, and they would be doing content exclusively together, and he would have control. He would be their manager and have control over what kind of content, meaning songs, what they wore, and that sort of thing. And he became more and more involved in these group of kids. As these group of kids got more popular and started creating these great videos together, they started bringing more content creators into the group, and they decided to move in together. And that's when Robert Shin became more and more controlling over these kids. So much so that Miranda's parents became very, very concerned. They hadn't been talking to their daughter. Melanie hadn't been talking with their sister. And there was this huge wedge dividing the relationship that was once very, very close. So as the parents became more and more concerned, they became more and more excluded from Miranda's life. They reached out, they tried to find her after she blocked them, and they did everything parents could do. They did not give up. And they even followed her rules. She said, you're not allowed to talk about Robert Shin or the church when we're together, and if you do that, I will talk to you or I will see you, but otherwise I don't want anything to do with you. There was a point when Miranda's grandpa passed away and she didn't even go to the funeral. She made excuses, she had COVID, and then she came clean and said she just can't leave. They obviously were not allowing her to go, and she didn't want to say why she couldn't leave, but it was pretty clear that it was because of the church and the management company. So because of this, and because over a year had gone by since they'd seen their daughter, they sat down in front of social media on Melanie's page and discussed what was going on with Miranda. They weren't going to keep it secret anymore, that she was part of a cult, allegedly, and she was being controlled. This wasn't her, and they were very concerned, and this video went viral. Now remember, the girls had 3.3 million followers at one time before they got into this management company, or before Miranda did. They were very successful on their own. This management company went after people who had already quite a following, because that was their way to catapult to the next level. And also that was a way of Robert gaining access to their finances through the church, through the management company. Up to 70 to 80% of what these kids were making was going straight to Robert Shin. Of course, he disguised it by saying 20% to the management company, 30% to the church, rent, this, that, and the other. But the reality was it was all going to Robert. So after this video went viral, a lot of people started speaking out. And at first, they were totally against the parents. They thought, leave her alone, let her do her thing. But as the video became more and more popular and more people saw it, some people that used to be part of the church, some people that used to be part of 7M management started coming forward with stories of abuse and control and alienation from their family. And it got so bad on social media that Robert Shin told Miranda and James that they needed to make a statement, that they needed to go out to Detroit, they needed to do a video confronting her parents. And so they did. They went out to see their parents, her parents, and they were really nasty to them. In fact, James even called them racist. And James stayed with the family for weeks during COVID, and they were very close, and they treated him like a son. So this was really concerning to the family because they knew these aren't our children. This is somebody else's words and ideas. These are not our kids. They're definitely being controlled and handled by this man. And they tried harder and harder to connect, but it just wasn't happening. And she became more and more part of the church and did whatever James wanted her to do. She was very manipulated and brainwashed. So this is when Melanie Lee sees these videos. Now, Melanie is a very strong woman. She stands right in her convictions, and when she was quite young, she and her sister were part of this church. The reason that they became part of this church was because their mother was very distant and not very nurturing to them, and so they were seeking solace in something, and then they found this church, and that's when they were introduced to Robert Shin. And in 2005, Melanie was baptized in Laguna Beach, which is where I live, and they just really were a huge part of the church. And in this church, it was the same pattern. They had the church members live together, they had the church members working for them, and these church members would sign their checks over to Robert and to the church, and they were paid a very small allowance, anywhere from $80 for 2 weeks to $100 per week, and they were very controlled by this man. And finally, Melanie left the church because Robert was making advances towards her, and she was very uncomfortable, and so she fled. She's like, I'm out of here. She started to wake up to the fact of what this really was, and her sister stayed, and her sister was there for 10 more years, enduring this abuse and being beaten by his current wife because of jealousy. And Robert didn't care. He just kind of sat there and took the wife's side, and Priscilla was so hurt by this, and she finally fled as well. This is when both sisters got together and decided they were going to take this man down. They were going to basically show the world who he was. A very controlling man who used young people that were vulnerable, and he ran it very similar to NXIVM and Scientology, where there was like, he was at the head, Father of God, and his wife, Mother of God, and then below them would be the members that would control everybody else. So Scientology does this, NXIVM did this, and they also took basically control of these people's finances, or they worked for them for free. So this is definitely a pattern in this cult-like church. And when they got together and decided they were going to take this man down, they started interviewing people from the church that had left, or people from 7M that had left, and some that were currently still involved. And they showed them, look, you think that you're giving your money to all of these different entities, but the reality is all your money is going to Robert Shin. He is taking all of your money, and he's controlling you, and he's alienating you from your kids, from your parents, from your friends, from your siblings. This is a cult, and you are 100% being used. And a lot of these kids opened their eyes and said, oh my goodness. And a lot of previous members started coming forward with their abuse allegations and saying, you know, this happened to me, he took advantage of me, he assaulted me, and he took all my money. And they were able to serve Robert Shin at his couple of his kids at a restaurant, and they felt so powerful and strong, and they felt they really got somewhere and they were going to take this man down. But the reality is, the police said, you know, to prove coercion to grown adults is tough. And you know, they willingly signed over their money. They were willingly controlled by this man. And the difficult part of the documentary is the way it ended. It ended with these poor siblings being alienated from each other. Miranda and Melanie are still alienated from each other. Miranda's still in this cult with her husband James. They're still very much a part of it. And unfortunately, Priscilla and Melanie are struggling to regain their relationship and to be there for each other. And I mean, Priscilla was in the cult for 23 years. That is a lot of brainwashing. She's got a lot of healing to do, and so does her relationship with her sister. Now, even though no arrests have been made, there is some new findings. July 2025.
Let's start with just what charges is Shin currently facing? What kind of prison time could he be looking at if he's convicted?
He is looking at a lot of charges on the table. There is sex trafficking, tax evasion, money laundering, and mail fraud. The highest penalty would go to the sex trafficking charge. He's looking at 15 years to life on that.
How does the church play into all of this, and what are some of the accusations from the former members?
Well, coercion is especially sinister when it involves a religious leader, which is an element to prove in a trafficking case if you're talking about adults. And here, where you have a religious leader who is almost seen as a connection and gateway to God for victims, that presents an incredibly powerful and persuasive figure for them to then feel like they are potentially risking their salvation or the salvation of others if they don't do what they say. And here, with the Netflix documentary, there were accusations that millions of souls would be lost if a certain amount of wages were not given back to the church. So it can really strengthen that link. Again, if we're talking about minors, we don't even need to show coercion, but we do often see in trafficking cases a link between religion being used as a way to perpetuate harm.
What kind of evidence?
Raid by the FBI, by the IRS, and by Department of Labor. They went to Robert Shin's home and took a hold of numerous items, and accusations of sex trafficking and human trafficking are out there. There's no arrest at this time, but as you know, with what happened with the Diddy situation, you know, once they come in like that, all these agencies come in and raid your home, and you're in trouble, and they've got a lot on you already. And we do remember that not only Priscilla went forward with the story of her abuse, but so did some other former members of the church. And so there's a lot of evidence out there. They're just building their case, and it's just a matter of time. And Miranda and James have shut down their social media, which is incredibly huge. I mean, it took them, 5 years to build their content together, and a few years before that. So this is hundreds and hundreds of videos and thousands of hours and millions of followers that was taken down. So did they take it down, or did Robert take it down? Did they ever actually have control of their social media? This is what I want to know. So leave your comments down below and let me know what you think. And just be careful out there. There's a lot of vultures, a lot of people that want to take away your dreams and exploit you. And just be safe. All right, I'll touch you guys soon. Bye.